Let's thank them for coming. This is the information that they have is wonderful. If you are unfamiliar with these people, because you may be new, if you go into your little packet, there's a Meet the Panelists. It gives you their kennel name, how long they have been a CCBA member. That doesn't mean that they have been in dogs that long. They may have been in dogs longer, but that's how long they have been a CCBA member. Some very interesting information. The part of the standard they felt was very important, and their favorite quotes. So be sure to check that out. The judges' critiques from the National are in there also. Lots of good information. Match that up with the dogs that they're talking about. Engage them. They are very engaging. On the other side, we have a couple things. One is who your committee members are. This is an amazing group of people, and I can't tell you how humbled I am to be kind of like the zookeeper. If you would listen or could listen in on those meetings, you would laugh, you would cry, you would be awed. They have amazing energy and knowledge and love of the Collie that you can't really compare any place. Be sure to thank these people. New to our group is Lee Cohen. She's not formally been adapted into this group because the board has to approve all committee members. Lee stepped in for Candy, who we lost last year at the last minute. And the committee said, there's enough of us, we're going to be able to do all these other things that Candy did, and reality hit late winter, and it was like, Lee, you've done it before, would you do it again? And she was insane enough to say yes, and we're like, we took her. So, she's been a great help to us, and she is our liaison for the mentoring. She does the name tags and everything, so we're glad she's with us too. Two other pieces of information. People always ask us to put this in there. Look these over before you go to ringside. They talk about how to really get the most out of a national. It's kind of like a little crib sheet. Pass it along to people. Get out there and look at the dogs and look for those virtues. Any questions so far about how this is going to go, other than what the paper, other part is for? That comes later. I'm a teacher. There's always a test involved. How many of you know what CHIC is? C-H-I-C. How many of you have no idea? How many of you know but don't know how it works? Well, we're going to have a presentation on CHIC to tell you everything you didn't know, and you'll go out of there with more knowledge, and it is there to help our breed. And Dr. David Hansen has been kind enough to come and to walk us through this so that we will be able to see what it is. Thank you, Dr. Hansen.
Good morning, everybody. They asked me a few weeks ago to give a little talk on CHIC. I'm the chair of the health committee for the CCA. And a few years ago, I guess many years ago, this was trying to get worked up to become a member of CHIC, and it just kind of didn't fly. Until a few years ago, I got more into it, found out more about it, how it works, and we eventually became a member of CHIC. So, Canine Health Information Center has been around for a while, and it was conceptualized by the AKC. We have delegates from the Parent Club and the Canine Health Committee. This was co-sponsored with OFA and AKC. They fund most of this information center, and it was implemented in the fall of 2001 with 8 pilot breeds. So the mission, it's not to just put out what's normal. It's an information site. It's a source for health information for owners, breeders, scientists, anybody that wants to get more information on individual breeds and hopefully assist in breeding healthier dogs. So now there's over 160 parent clubs participating, including the CCA. and it represents over 3/4 of the AKC breeds. 90,000 dogs have been met, individual breed requirements. We each set our own breed requirements and have been assigned chick numbers. So in short, you know, the collects health test results from multiple sources. These results are available online to anybody, public access, and it recognizes those dogs that have been tested in accordance to the parent club's protocol. So this is more about encouraging health testing and awareness and testing in general. And then when a chick number is only issued when those test results are entered into the database, satisfying for that breed, and when the owner has opted to release the results. So if that doesn't happen, it's not released. So that goes into the public domain. Okay. It's not about what's normal. It's not a stamp of approval. It's not an award program. So these do not inherently imply normal results. Dogs with abnormal results are in there as well. And a lot of these tests, there's carriers. So, you know, with both PRA and MDR1, which there can be carrier status, you know, it basically gives you the results. It doesn't say what's good or bad. It allows each parent club to work through this. Okay? So, you know, each parent club decides what they want to do with this, and we have to put in that input. It tailors those requirements to meet the concerns of your breed. Okay. So with us, when we first started, they would like you to have 3 tests that are required. They will accept 2 tests. And at the time, with what DNA tests were out there, we decided to go with the 2 biggies, which is PRA and MDR1. Very concrete, proven test that we're very comfortable with, that the results are always valid. Some DNA tests, it depends on the lab that's doing them, they don't have enough peer review to be that confident in the results yet. So, you know, with any test, as a veterinarian out there, with any test, you have to look at where it's coming from, how much peer review, is it really a good quality test, is it going to tell you something? So those 2 tests were the ones we decided on. We can add another test at some point if the CCA, the board of directors, and membership decide they want to add a 3rd test as a requirement. However, once you get a chick number, you can do other tests and add them to the profile of your dog. So even though it's not required, as we'll see later, there are other tests that you can do. And those were some. The website is Canine Health. What was up there? A little faster. And that kind of brings you up to this website here. Actually, Mike, can you go back? There's just a couple other slides I want to mention before we get to this. So the breed requirements, when we'll get to this page again, is the PRA and multiple drug testing. It has our website down there, and so the only other thing that is required is they need to be permanently identified before you get a chick number, before these tests, and that's with either a microchip or a tattoo. So microchipping is readily available out there. So, and with anything, even OFA, I believe now, it has for many years required a microchip. So permanent identification is a big key also. Let's go to the next one. This is the very first certificate by the Sonnenbergs, and that was 9/14 of 2011. I think the sad point right now is that was in 2011. We only have 33 Collie chick numbers. That's all we have right now. So obviously it's not well known out there. A number of you didn't even know about chick or the information or where to go to get it. We can go to the website now. So that's the thing we're going to try to do is get you interested. At least, you know, so a lot of you have done these tests also. And so this is the main page you get to. On the left side, there's all these different categories that will describe the benefit goals, the breed clubs, finding fee structure. With this, if the tests are already in the database of OFA, there's no charge for it. If it's an outside test, if they have to input the data, there's a one-time $25 fee per dog. So once you get your dog registered, then you can add other tests and it doesn't cost you anything else. Okay, so that's their fee structure. But if it's the other tests from OFA that are already in the registry, it doesn't even cost. So as we're going along, then we go over to Collie breeds and chick breeds, and you see Collie down there. And then when we go on to the next one, this is the database. So once you come up with that Collie, you can go into the database and put as much numbers in there as you can. We just put in breed, and 33 Collies come up. And this is that page, so it tells you the number, birth date, gives you all this information. And then when you go to an individual dog, it gives you that information. It gives you sire, dam. These are the other tests that they did: thyroid, hips, elbows, Great Collie syndrome. And then you see the 2 required tests at the bottom of that. And it gives you the results on the other side there. So, like I say, it's, this one's a MDR1 mutant. So it's going to give you all the information. It's strictly an information site. And the owners choose to release this. So it gives you siblings and sires. If there's another one that's in there that has a chick number, the sire or dam, it will pop that up into there also, and you can go over to that dog. So it gives you a lot of general information. The other thing that this has is a site to save DNA. A lot of researchers are starting to use this to gather DNA on specific breeds for individual problems. So if there's a high incidence of lymphosarcoma and Goldens, heaven forbid that, it's like most of them, they can go in and they can get DNA. If they have a good study for that, they can go in and get DNA from a lot of them that are there, and they have a lot of this other information on pedigrees and things like that. So they can do a lot of good studies and have that DNA available down the road. So I think that's about. Is there another one, or is that it? The DNA. Okay. So all these different things, the DNA repository will just give you a lot more information that makes it available. With ours, we do have other DNA where we make, our Collie DNA, but this is, they do both blood or cheek swabs also. Any information or questions on the CHIP program itself? Yeah.
David, with regard to the PRA tests, do you have to have tested and have a result for each individual animal, even if they have been cleared by both their parents being cleared?
You can get cleared by pedigree for one generation. They will only go for one generation. So if you do, most of your questions and stuff also, you can go to their frequently asked questions. The other thing is their contact. Eddie Duzick is excellent. When I got started, he emailed you back within usually a few hours, at least within a day. He basically is in charge. This has been his baby throughout, and he gave me all the initial information to allow us to make the decision to go with it. And any questions, they let me know a couple weeks ago that they would like me to do this, and so I emailed him, and he within 12 hours gave me these slides, and he updated the numbers and all those things on it, and so he gave me a lot of information very quickly. So frequently asked questions, and also he's a good source. If you're really trying to get started and don't understand, he will certainly explain it to you very well. Another question?
Can you show us where you go in to enter your own data for your dog on the website?
I don't believe you enter your own information.
Okay.
You contact them and give them the information, and they put it in there.
Okay.
If there's already the test available, they have the information from those tests from OFA, so that goes in automatically. But if it's a separate test, you have to send them the information. if it's approved by DNA, you have to send them I think, DNA test actually to do it, and the microchip numbers, and then they put that information in.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? I would encourage more people to do this. I mean, most of you have already done the MDR1 and PRA tests. I mean, we have on all ours. And yeah, I'm as bad as anybody. We haven't had ours. I don't have our dogs in here either. It's one of those things you got to make an effort to do. So I think, certainly the more of us do it, the more information. It just allows everybody to make better breeding decisions and to go forward. So, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, before we get started, we're going to have a little wake-up game. You have a card in front of you. It's got a number on it, and I'll tell you that if I were doing this with my children at school, there would be no numbers on it. But I'm here to help you this morning because it's early and you're traveling very hard. And we've even made it a little easier. If you have an odd numbered card, raise your hand. So all the odd numbers are on this side. Hands down. If you have an even numbered card, raise your hand. If you have a red word on your card, raise your hand. Y'all do. That's your cue. So, if it says it's looking for stop, and you have stop on the card, you got the answer. And if you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll know what card comes next. Okay? So it's very easy. When you have it, example, I have the first card. Number 1. Who has the first general statement about the standard? So that'll be a number 2 card. Who has a general statement about that? Okay, you need to stand up and say, I do, and speak into that.
I do. And then do I read it?
You read it.
Okay. The Collie is a light, strong, responsive, active dog carrying no useless timber, standing naturally straight and firm. And then do I read the...
You read.
Who has the overall structure?
Pay attention, there's going to be a test.
The deep, moderately wide chest shows strength, the sloping shoulders and well-fed hocks indicates speed and grace, and the face shows high intelligence. Who has the overall picture?
Overall picture. That's an even card.
Here it is, David. Collie presents an impressive, proud picture of a true balance, each part being in harmonious proportion to every other part in the whole. Who has the expectation of the proportion?
Okay, say that again so they can hear it.
Who has the expectation of the proportion?
Proportion.
Number 5.
Except for the technical description that is essential to the standard, and without which no standard for the guidance of breeders and judges is adequate. It could be stated simply that no part of the Collie ever seems to be out of proportion to any other part. Who has opening statement about the Collie's head?
I do. That's the head properties are of great importance, I find. When considered in proportion to the size of the dog, the head is inclined to lightness and never appears massive. The heavy-headed dog lacks the necessary bright, alert, full of sense look that contributes so greatly to expression. Who has the Collie head in profile?
Okay, we need the microphone or it won't come into the video.
I do. That's both in front and profile. The head bears a general resemblance to a roe hunted being wedge, being smooth and clean and outlined and nicely balanced and proportioned. Profile view, top of the back skull, top of the muzzle line, 2 approximately parallel, straight plane, divided by a very slight but perceptible stop and break. Who has the Collie head on the sides?
On the sides, the head tapers gradually and smoothly from the ears to the end of the black nose without being flared out in backs called cheeky or pinched in the muzzle sniping. Who has bits of the sock? A midpoint between the inside corners of the eyes, which is the center of a correctly placed stop, is the center of balance and length of head. Who has muzzle and bite?
The end of the smooth, well-rounded muzzle is blunt but not square. The underjaw is strong, clean-cut, and the depth of the skull from the brow to the under part of the jaw is not excessive. The teeth are of good size, meeting in a scissors bite. Who has the properties of back skull?
There is a very slight prominence of the eyebrows. The black back skull is flat without receding either laterally or backward, and the occipital bone is not highly peaked. The proper width of the back skull necessarily depends upon the combined length of the skull and muzzle, and the width of the back skull is less than length. Thus, the correct width varies with the individual and is dependent upon the extent to which it is supported by the length of the muzzle. Who has the overall statement about the eyes? I do. They are almond-shaped of medium size and never properly appear to be large or prominent. The color is dark and the eye does not show a yellow ring or sufficiently prominent core to affect the dog's expression. Who has eye color stipulations for blue rooms?
Okay, let's wait for 1 minute. Who has card number 12? Please read 12. There are two things about the eyes.
Because of the combination of the black skull, the arched eyebrows, the slight stop, and the rounded muzzle, the foreface must be chiseled to form a receptacle for the eyes, and they are necessarily placed obliquely to give them the required forward outlook. The eyes have a clear, bright appearance, expressing intelligence and criticism, particularly when the ears are drawn up and the dog is on alert. Who has the shape and color of the eyes?
Okay, shape and color. We did that, so go ahead and ask your question now.
Oh, you want me to ask my question now?
Yeah.
Who has eye color stipulations for blue girls?
I do.
Who has eye color stipulations for blue girls?
Except for the blue merles, they're required to be matched in color. Dark brown eyes are preferable, but either or both eyes may be merle or china in color without specific penalty. Who has the proportion of the ears?
The ears are in proportion to the size of the head, and if they are carried properly and unquestionably break naturally, are seldom too small. Large ears usually cannot be lifted correctly off the head, and even if lifted, they will be out of proportion to the size of the head. Who has ears in repose and on alert?
I do. When in repose, the ears are folded lengthwise and thrown back into the frill. On the alert, they are drawn well up on the back skull and are carried about 3/4 erect, with about 1/4 of the ear tipping or breaking forward. Who has the neck in his carriage?
The neck is firm, clean, muscular, and heavily frilled. It's fairly long, carried upright with a slight arch of the nape, and imparts a proud and upstanding appearance, showing off the frill. Who has body proportion?
I do.
The body is firm, hard, and muscular, a trifle long in proportion to the height. The ribs are well-rounded behind the well-sloped shoulders, and the chest is deep, extending to the elbows. Who has the back, croup, and loin?
The back is strong and level, supported by powerful hips and thighs, and the croup is sloped to give a well-rounded
The forelegs are straight and muscular, with a fair amount of bone considering the size of the dog. The forearm is moderately fleshy, and the pasterns are flexible but without weakness. The hind legs are less fleshy, muscular at the thighs, very sinewy, and the hocks and stifles are well bent. Who has the feet?
The comparatively small feet are approximately oval in shape. The soles are well padded and tucked, and the toes are well arched and close together. Who has the collie in a natural standing position?
When the collie is not in motion, the legs and feet are judged by allowing the dog to come to a natural stop in a standing position, so that both the forelegs and the hind legs are placed well apart, with the feet extending straight forward. Who has a general statement about the gait?
The gait is sound, suggests effortless speed combined with the dog's herding heritage, requiring it to be capable of changing its direction of travel almost instantaneously. Who has movement of the dog in a slow trot?
When the dog is moved at a slow trot toward an observer, its straight front legs track comparatively close together at the ground. Their front legs are not out at the elbows, do not cross over, nor does the dog move with a choppy, pacing, or rolling gait. Who has hind leg movement?
Card 25.
When viewed from the rear, the hind legs are straight, tracking comparatively close together at the ground. At a moderate trot, the hind legs are powerful and propelling. Who has reaching stride and single tracking?
Viewed from the side, reasonably long, reaching stride is smooth and even, keeping the back line firm and level. As the speed of the gait is increased, the collie single tracks, bringing the front legs inward in a straight line from the shoulder toward the center of the body, and the hind legs inward in a straight line from the hips toward the center of the body. Who has the tail?
I do. The tail is moderately long, the bone reaching to the hock joint or below. It is carried low when the dog is quiet, the end having an upward twist or swirl. When gaited or when the dog is excited, it is carried gaily but not over the back. Who has a general statement about the coat?
Well-fitting, proper textured coat is the crowning glory of the rough variety of collie. It is abundant except on the head and legs. The texture, quantity, and the extent to which the coat fits the dog are important points. Who has the outer coat and the undercoat?
I do. The outer coat is straight and harsh to the touch. It is abundant except on the head and legs. The undercoat, however, is soft, furry, and so close together that it is difficult to see the skin when the hair is parted. The face, or mask, is smooth. The coat is very abundant on the mane and frill. Who has coat and feathering on the legs?
I do. The forelegs are smooth and well feathered to the back of the pasterns. The hind legs are smooth below the hock joints. Any feathering below the hocks is removed for the show ring. Who has hair on the tail and hips?
The hair on the tail is very profuse, and on the hips it is long and bushy. Who has the 4 recognized colors of the collie?
I do. The 4 recognized colors are sable and white, tricolor, blue merle, and white. Who has the weight of the collie?
dogs are from 24 inches to 26 inches at the shoulder and weigh 60 to 75 pounds. Bitches are from 22 to 24 inches at the shoulder, weighing from 50 to 65 pounds. Who has one of the most important points when evaluating a collie?
Card 34.
Yes, why not?
Expression is one of the most important points in considering the relative value of collies. Expression, like the term character, is difficult to define in words. It is not a fixed point as in color, weight, or height, and it is something the uninitiated can properly understand only by optical illustration. Who has the generalized statement about expression?
With expression in general, however, it may be said that the combined product of the shape and balance of the skull and muzzle, the placement, size, shape, and color of the eye, and the position, size, and carriage of the ears. Who has the difference between judging smooths and roughs?
The smooth variety in Collie is judged by the same standards as the rough variety, except that the references to the quantity and distribution of the coat are not applicable to the smooth variety, which has a short, hard, dense, flat coat of good texture with an abundance of undercoat. I have the last card.
There you go. You did quite well. Give yourself a round of applause. As we did this, how many of you heard something in the standard and went, oh yeah, or I forgot about that, or ooh, I didn't know that. No, but as you go into this national, go with what you heard and ask those questions of these people. Now, just so that you know, from your left to your right, we have Mike Esch, Signet Collies. Barb Linder, Donnybrook. Williford, Twin Cities. And Les Canavan, Royal Rock. Okay, we're going to start with our general questions first. Regarding your experience at judging the National, did the reality meet your expectations? And we're going to start with Mike first, and the next time we'll start down the road and down the road and down the road. Mike.
You know, when I first came to the National, it was amazing how many people wanted to help me figure out how to run the ring. And then when you get to the show, you realize that other people had other plans for you, like where the judges' ed people were going to sit. And so, you know, going into the National, it was like what everybody would do. You know, you're kind of worried, you don't want to screw it up, right? You want to remember to check those testicles. It's amazing how easy you can forget that. But, you know, the thing I've noticed over the years in dogs is that the old days, and unfortunately I'm getting to that point, there was always so much more selection before you ever got to a National. Shows were bigger, much more stronger dogs in the shows. And so you always saw good quality of dogs. And unfortunately today that's getting harder and harder. So coming to the National, I expected to see some really great dogs. And I was very, very pleased to see that. Just the diversity and all the adages that everybody tells you, that dog that walks into the ring, you know, will jump right out at you, that's true. You know, the ones that you see that just hit your eye, that's true too. And then there's a bunch of them you say, you know, okay. Because we all have those dogs, right? We've all had those dogs in our career. But did it match up my expectations? Absolutely. It was a lot of fun.
Barb.
This was a lifetime dream. Lassie, been at this 44 years. I had my first litter when I was 10 years old. Lassie has been a big part of my life, never anything else. To be asked to judge the CC of A was the epitome. I always thought I wanted the breed, And then I got bitches, that was fine. But attending 44 shows, I've seen so many of them win. I've seen some fantastic dogs. Is the expectation, I want that special dog to walk in the ring. Did it blow me out of the park? I thought I had one of the most beautiful winter circles, and you guys that weren't in California, I looked around that ring and every one of them deserved. They were absolutely beautiful. All of them are finished. So it spoke well of California. And who came over the mountains? I cannot tell you. These people with their dogs came over those mountains. They were coming in that ring, and people I've known for how many years? You really drove this far because they had too many dogs and they didn't want to ship them. It's a hardship. But that California's here again. I'm looking and I'm seeing they make the trip and they go. The national is really important. It was twice as important to me because I come from Western Pennsylvania. J.P. McCain, who started our Collie Club, and if you know your history, and I think there's too many people that don't know their history in our breed, he started our club. He was the first black man to judge the CCFA. He was the first president and founder of our club. I had a long way to go. I had Alex Gibbs, who judged the national, who had been around forever, came from Scotland. I had Ed Myers, that if anyone was the district director, they knew who Ed Myers was. He was the honorable, kept us in a straight line, and got rid of the bullshit that goes on now. He didn't tolerate, and I miss him. I really miss some good common sense and slapping. And then to have Barbara Linder be number 4 from Western Pennsylvania, it was one of the greatest honors I could have in this breed. And I could not thank my district directors and California who put my name in there because of the political, watch your mouth, Barbara, the political part that goes on in nominating judges. It is such an honor. It is people, well, Les 3 times. I've been there every time she's judged. It is an unbelievable honor to have. And there are too many people overlooked because of the popular selection. So enough of that. The honor, top it off with, we have a banner in Pittsburgh. And it has all these names on it. These wonderful names, Rivette, Ingram, you name it. And I'm lucky enough to be on it. And Debbie Holland was at our show this year, and so many people don't pay attention. She looked up on the wall, and she's seen history on that wall. You should be proud of who came from your area and what they did. And if no one's done it, someone should. What are you sitting on? I mean, that's what it's about. Barbara, were you impressed with our banner?
Oh, I loved it.
And enough people.
And I judged one of your shows.
Yes, right,
Done
yes.
second.
It was just, cannot tell you enough. The honor that comes along with this and all these years, and even to be up here. But to judge the CCNA was it. And I was real surprised to watch this fellow judge, and he did a decent job because he put up a lovely bitch that was out of my winter's bitch in California. Enough said. Thank you.
Yes, mine was California as well, and it was an honor. I was fortunate enough to be voted on to do this, only having been licensed judge for 7 or 8 years. So I was not only surprised, but I was also thinking, are you really ready for this? And the interesting thing about it was that my mother found out on her deathbed that I had gotten a breed, and that was very important. Unfortunately, she was not able to go. 2 of my sisters went. And I was accused of driving Miss Daisies all week. We arrived early on a Sunday, which was a big mistake because I was not judging until Friday, and that was the longest 4 or 5 days of my life. I would never do that again. My biggest worry going into this was that I was going to get confused or lose sight of the dogs that were going to be in contention. And the truth of the matter is, when you talk about the standard and the general character, pretty ones always rise to the occasion. And you don't have to write down that this one was pretty every time you look at it. Those were the dogs that kept drawing your eye. Nancy McDonald told me one time that John Honey made the comment that judges were really just an usher. And I never forgot that going into it. And so the dogs judge themselves, you're just an usher.
I agree with everything my compatriots have said. However, to me, I think my greatest pleasure is getting my hands on all those dogs. I recall a very brief thing that years ago I had been at the CCFA and I was newer then, and of course I knew more then. And we sat there and the Tri Dog went up for winner's dog at the National, and we all took it apart. And we all knew the judge had done it wrong. And at the time I was a handler, and I judged in the Midwest. And Verna came along with me, my greatest critic. And I went through the dogs and I went through them, and there was this one dog that I just sort of kept moving up. And I ended up putting this Tri Dog winner's dog. And in between my next doing bitches, Verna called me over and she said, "Gee, that was a nice Tri Dog, wasn't it?" And I said, "Sure was." And she said, "You just put up winner's dog from the National, so next time, shut up." And she was right. I agree that there are dogs that stand out, but there are dogs who are beautiful collies, and it takes you a while to see them. And the good assets keep coming to you. And I'm sure they'll agree with me that when you get in the ring and you're judging, you go into a different mode. It's like you're not really yourself, and you really know what you're looking at least you think you do. And it's, as they say, it's a great pleasure to do it. I've been fortunate enough to have done dogs, bitches, and best of breed. And my true love is still bitches, sorry to say. But, and I went with a bitch for best of breed at the Nationals. But I enjoyed it, and I think it's a great thing. And I think we do have to be a little careful in who we pick. And politics should sure as hell be out of this.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Excellent. I'll extend your discussion. You know, one of the things I appreciated in judging is if you sit at the ringside and you just look at dogs, you will never figure this out. And there's way too many people that do that. And I would also dare say there are very few people who actually go through the grooming setup and actually put your hands on dogs, ask the owners to pull the dogs out. The value of the earlier days when I started in college back in 1970 was everybody, there was always these after the show sessions, people would talk about stuff, you put your hands on dogs. And as many times as you sit in the ring and look at them, or sit outside the ring, it's different when you're in the ring putting your hands on it. And it's really more similar to the sessions out in the grooming areas where you're watching dogs move up and down an aisle, or you're actually talking to somebody about their dog. And I miss those old days because we used to do that all the time. And nowadays it's just, everybody wants to sit out in bleacher seats and say that's my national, and therefore I'm going to find that right dog or bitch to breed to. So I always encourage people to do that as much as possible.
So get off your seat after you've been in the mentoring and go visit. Okay, what I heard from this was the pretty ones are always going to come. Touch the dogs. Good assets are going to keep coming to you, and you have to get away from ringside. You can't ringside judge. You have to touch. Okay, you prepare for those dogs for the judges. They prepare too. How do you prepare for something like the National? We'll start with Steinberg.
Well, I had a rude awakening because I shopped. I shopped from the time I'm not wearing polyester. So after I spent, I'm glad I did it, I've only worn it once. California, and what a great facility, back to California. And I miss this. I know it's difficult, but I've been in a club that put on the CCA. There's no place to socialize. There isn't. The new people, there's no place for people to get together or to sit around or discuss dogs. And it's not who's who. It's the newcomers, and with what? We're all at different hotels. You don't get that opportunity. You have to do it at the show site, which is also very difficult because everyone's very busy. And they have a lot of work going on. But that, back to the point. I get to a beautiful suite. They sent wine up. I wonder why wine for me. I had a basket of wine and glasses. And I had a blouse that I thought that really needs press. So I took the ironing board out, and I had an entourage with me. We had 2 suites. And I am ironing my white blouse, and I left the door open. It was a little warm. And the lady walking past said to me, "Are you the maid?" How many years? 40 years hoping to get this? Am I the maid? I looked at her and I said, "You have an entry." She says, "No, I don't, but my daughter does," and took off. I'm the judge. But anyhow, it was a moment I'll never forget, and I'm sure that mother will never forget it either. I'm sure the daughter will. She took care of Mom.
Carl.
I probably didn't shop as much as Barb did, I'm sure. Like Mike, you're either going to wear a suit or you're going to wear a tux, so it's pretty easy after that. But the main preparation I did, I was like reading the standard over and over. Finally, I just put it away, and I said, either you know it by now or you don't. And I tried to take my mind off of what the task was and really just concentrating on what my procedures were going to be. I remember calling Tommy Cohen and asking his advice going into this. And he and Alma both sat me down and said, "You know what, you're ready for this. It's a situation where you just clear your mind, go do your thing, and enjoy it. And the most part, have fun." And I'll never forget those words. And they were very comforting to me. And they were great people to go to. Not only did they judge their own national shelties, but Tommy had already judged the Collie National. So I went out and I vacationed, and I enjoyed the coast of California. And once I realized that the time was slowly ticking by, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we tried to go do as many touristy things as we could to take my mind off of it and just to relax and enjoy it. That was huge. The other thing Tommy told me was to change shoes a lot because your feet are going to kill you. So I took many shoes.
Did you shop for those shoes?
Oh, yeah.
We needed to ask. Les.
Okay, I guess I'm the only one who goes out and exercises. But you never had Mrs. Long for a client. She taught me well. However, I have a 300-foot run dogs, and I worked up to doing that run and a good jog 10 times a day because I figured I was going to need it. I didn't want to be, and I'm active. I'm not, sitting there. I am now. However, so I did the exercising because I think I felt you needed to prepare physically and mentally. I reviewed the standard again, but then I went through the past, I have yearbooks going back to 50 something. And I went through them and checked some of the dogs that they had put up, just to see what the trend had been over the years. And it was interesting, and there was some really great dogs in there, and there was some so-so dogs. So I sort of did it from both ends, mentally and physically.
Okay. Mike. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, that's one question. Is the black dog you're talking about the one that you put up, did it like your stop just a dog to watch the commercial?
No, he was from the Midwest.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
What?
But he was a very nice dog.
I know, because I had him and did the same thing that you did.
Oh.
At the same show. I looked at him at the National and said, ooh, and then I went and had him, put him up, and wrote the judge a letter of apology. He didn't know what I was apologizing for.
Mike?
Yeah, so, like other people, I hadn't been, judging all that long. I always thought that my wife Tess was going to be the one judging the national before me, if I ever got so lucky. So, but also, like some other folks have said, I watched, paid attention how Tommy judged, and just, up to the couple of years in advance, watching their ring patterns and how they do it. I tend to stand very, very far away from the dogs. Thank God I still have good eyesight. So I'm all about seeing dogs from a really far distance, and that's what I really tried to make sure I happen. And probably the last thing is my personal pet peeve. I wanted to make sure I minimized my butt view to the video camera. After looking at it, I wasn't very successful at that. But it's all, and I was so lucky because I had Michelle, my daughter, being my ring steward, and that helped me a lot. And just because I was so nervous, and probably the weird, I didn't shop at all, and they were old shoes, but I did bring lots of them. Because I just had a bunch of surgery all over my body about 3 days before, so that national, I was practically third covered with bandages. And of course, you're a little sweating on the first time, right? And you walk in there and everything starts to loosen up. And so I had to do a quick pit stop at the first break and run to the restroom and have my daughter-in-law, the doctor, kind of help repatch me up. But that was my biggest prep, worrying about something happening underneath my clothes. I didn't want anyone to see.
Mike, look here. And there are no scars whatsoever on your face.
I told you they were going to be good. Okay, so what I heard with this round was shop well, bargain hunt, read the standard, ask advice, clear your mind, change your shoes, exercise. You need stamina, both physical and mental. Watch for patterns, have a sense of humor, know where your butt is at, have fun. Does this sound like the same things that we need to be doing as exhibitors? To have a little bit more empathy for the judges now? Okay, so, you're there. What went through your head? We'll start with Carl. You're in the ring. What's going through your head?
Oh, the feelings and emotions. I was really nervous going over the first call that walked in the ring. And I remember my hands were doing this going over, but I had to just kind of back away and get a hold of myself. Like letting the dogs go around the ring and relaxing, that also relaxed me. And honestly, after the second examination, I was in my zone. And it was a good feeling, a very good feeling. Moving up to the moment got more and more exciting for me. And also the responsibility that went with that became rather taxing because you're thinking, you're about to do this. And the one you're going to put up is going to wind up on the front and the back cover. And, you better be proud of your choice. And, but I remember watching the dogs come together in the final selection. You better like what your final decisions are because they're going to be your choices. And if you've made mistakes along the way, that's when you're going to pay the price. So.
Les?
Yeah, well, I have to agree, no matter how many times you do it, you're always nervous. And I know even when I'm judging a regular specialty, it goes through my head, why did they ever pick you? And it's true, you doubt yourself. But as Carl said, when you get going, if you get into it, all that goes out of your head, thank God. I think, too, that all of us were fortunate enough to get the background in and we had a chance to judge big entries. I think it's going to be really tough for people today who never get the 100-dog entries and plus 100-dog entries and get used to handling it because it is very confusing. And the other thing that is a godsend is a good ring steward. I want somebody there who knows what's coming up. Because there are times you get in there and you're trying to make a decision And I find I'm going over the two dogs in the ring, and for a minute there, it's like, where are we really? You know, because my mind is on those two dogs. And having done it, I also find that the handlers by now know what I like and what I don't like. So I end up with an awful lot of dogs that I really like. And some of the handlers, well, I'd say most of the handlers are pretty good, but one of the handlers in particular, who was under me when I was doing bitches, remarked when it was over that, and she went second, observed, remarked that as soon as she saw the other dog, she knew I'd like it. So maybe it doesn't help to do it too often.
Mike.
Yeah, you know, it's everything everybody has said. You're nervous, the first dog, you know, you're sitting there worried. Luckily, you know, it's that trepidation, that concern that maybe you're going to miss something. But you know, I found that when I got everybody out, and I actually tweaked the ring pattern a little bit after that first class, because I was really wanted to make sure that the exhibitor saw as much as I could give them, as much as I could see. So I tweaked it a little bit just to kind of facilitate that. And I also found that, there again, coming back to what other people had told me, is, you know, the way you bring the dogs out, you're less likely to lose your dogs. Because I've been in nationals where you knew the judge had lost the dog. They had lost the dog in the ring, and it's very easy to do. And so you use the ring patterns a lot in how you judge, just to avoid that. And that's probably the thing I was scared about. I wasn't scared about finding the right dog or anything. I was scared about losing the right dog in the ring. Because you do get really nervous, and you do get in a zone, but then sometimes you get so much in the zone, you say, because they all look alike after a few sables, you know. Under the dog, you go, wow, they're all brown, right? So, same sort of feelings.
Okay, Barb.
1968 was my first CC vet, and it was in Virginia. And they had a large cocktail party. And everyone was in the room, and the room had a hum. It had a hum, it was alive, there was people greeting each other, friends from across the country. Who's who from Collie Cues was walking around. I was just in absolute awe, standing on the outside of this. And I said, I want to be part of that. I'm breeding these dogs. I want to be part of that. History is in front of me. Seeing them walk around, greet each other. It wasn't just showing dogs. They really enjoyed seeing each other. The room was alive. When I got to California and walked up to the ring, I started crying. They did a wonderful thing. They had sold name tags, they made plaques. They were all around the ring. My friends, they had my dogs, their mother, and I've had a few. But there were at least 15 plaques with the names of my dogs on. And don't you know, when you walk into the end, in that corner, and you look, and there is Silky and Crystal. How many CCVAs? How wonderful it was. These things are really important. Besides the dogs, we're there for the dogs, but this national, and not everyone has a top banana. They're coming up through the lines, and this is what projects them for the future. But these thoughtful things that these people do. Can you imagine walking up to the ring as you're going to the CCVA and seeing the names of your dogs by, it blew me out of the water. It was a Stars Walk. He's cheating when he tells you, I'm in the ring judging, and he leans over when he walks in the room and he looks all over and he says, Barb, why aren't you nervous? I said, I waited a lifetime for this. You'll be fine. And that was the truth. I waited forever to be in this. My moment to find that dog. And I hope some of you have the opportunity one day. That's what it's all about.
What I heard was you had to relax and get into the zone. You have to think about the responsibility. I think sometimes we forget that the judges realize there is a responsibility on them. And we're going to get to that question later in this. Be proud of the choice. Get into a rhythm. have a good ring steward. Have people know what dogs you like, the type of dog. Use the right ring pattern so that you don't lose the dog. Okay, so you're there, the dogs are there. You have access to the cream of the crop. The dogs are being judged, you're touching them, you're moving them. Then there's that aha moment when you look at the dog and you say, this is absolutely the one. Talk about those dogs, and we'll start with Les. Now, if you watch the screen, the dogs are going to pop up because Nancy is very talented.
There are dogs not necessarily. Oh, you're showing the picture?
No, you go ahead and you talk, and Nancy will take care of it.
Okay. These are not necessarily though dogs that I judged at the National, but there are dogs that over the years have remained in my mind as prototypes of the breed. And most of you have been around, know them by their call name. And when you get a dog and everybody in the nation knows him by its call name, you've pretty well made it. And my first one would have to be Fallon, that I judged and put winner's bitch at the National. And she had some really tough competition, but she really was, in my estimation, one of the prettiest bitches I've ever seen. And in her class has to be Mocha. Are they getting names on the screen?
I think Nancy has them up there, yes.
Oh, okay, so you get the name. She was a lovely bitch, California bitch, set the standard along with Fallon and some of the others. Blush was a little later date. Going back in time, Blue Jeans, who was an East Coast dog, and my smooth silver charm of Chrysalis. If you notice, I'm cheating again and I put the bitches first. Sorry about that. In dogs, I would have to lead off with Hawk. And when I was traveling to CCAs, Sandy Tuttle used to come east, and Sandy Tuttle and Janet Lee and I were all in the van and driving to California or Texas or God knows where. We used to play a game and say, okay, who was the greatest sable and white bitch you ever saw? And it was understood that you could not use your own dog or anything that you had bought. And it's funny because we played this game for years, we had a great time with it, but we decided to expand it. And if we had somebody extra with us, we'd say, okay, so-and-so, this is the name of the game, this is what we do, and it passed the time. And invariably, with our new people, we got the following remark. Okay, these are my greatest sable bitches I've ever seen, but I can't really leave my own dog out, which is an insight into some people's mind. But at any rate, getting back to the dogs. Hawk, Chimney Sweep, Stony Kirk Reflection, the Gladiator, and this, unfortunately, is not the greatest picture of the Gladiator, who's really a lovely dog, and Bronze Talisman. And that would be the dogs that have impressed me most.
Les just made an interesting comment. She said, unfortunately, this is not the best picture of the dog. Again, go back to what they said earlier. If you have the opportunity to feel these dogs, do it now while they're still around. And don't judge a dog by his picture or by one day. We'll hear that constantly.
Can I add one point?
Go right ahead.
Back in the day, the biggest problem was that some of the pictures of the dogs were pretty lousy. And I remember going out to the West Coast after I had read all the magazines, and Collie Review and Collie Cues, and had pictures in there. And when I went out to the West Coast, it was like, hey, that's not that dog. I saw his picture. And in most cases, the pictures were not a good indication of the true value of the dog. It might have been taken out of code or such and such. But I think today what you're going to have to watch is the picture that you're looking like hasn't been altered. So you're not going to see the true dog any more than we did back there, but yours is going to look a lot better because somebody has taken care of any little discrepancies. So keep it in mind when you see pictures.
Mike?
Yeah, last year, a little more. Are we going to? By the way, I had a senior moment, so are we answering what the dogs we like from our nationals or dogs we had in our breeding programs?
Whichever.
What was wrong?
We're flexible.
Okay, great. That was a big question. Last year, that Smooth Winter's bitch, when she came in, that bitch, I loved her to death. She was ornery as hell, and she got worse as she got along. But it's all about the picture that they present in the ring, right? And if you were to go back through all these pictures, I mean, when I first got my first Smooth, it was Tracy. Can I throw up Tracy's picture there? Horse Charmer, Liquor. Yeah. She was best of variety at the 78 National, my very, very first Smooth. And I got to tell you, she started a lot to me about what Smooths are. Smooths were going through a transition period back at that time. There were some really nice ones, there was a little not so nice ones. And so finding those dogs that really, kind of cement the view. And for Tracy, it was all about her expression. She had a very, very pretty expression. Unfortunately, there's almost no pictures left of Tracy. They're all copies of other copies because the original got lost. But, in Smooths, because that's where I had 2 champion routes before I got into Smooths, and then it all became Smooths to me, and it all became because my wife, Tess, she wanted a Smooth, I had a Smooth, Brett to Hossey, Tracy to Mr. Wonderful, who was Reserve Winner's dog at National, and so very much driven by Midwest dogs. So I would name dogs that were more Midwest focused, because back then, we didn't travel much, Dad had to work, so we saw a lot of Midwest stuff, all the 2-gem stuff, all the Coteaus, all the stuff out of that Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky group were really a hotbed. And you could always find in any one ring, in any one weekend, 6 or 7 of the top 10 collies in the country every weekend in the ring. And just when you're competing against that stuff, I mean, and there's so many of those dogs that you could rattle off. But all of the ones I'm sure everybody else will talk about, you'll find that are just as great. And I got to tell you, that rough bitch, when she came out, I didn't know she was part of hers that she had put up, or I probably wouldn't have done it. But again, one of those dogs, when they just walk in the ring, I mean, they just pop on you. And it's funny because you see so many after a while, right? And then you see that one, and for some reason, there's that one point. And I remember when we all first start, the judge would say, well, I only need to see the expression for a little bit. And they're so true. But you have to see it. And if you miss it, you're hosed. Because you just never get that other chance. And that bitch gave that to me. I always appreciate it. So we'll go back through some of these other pictures a little later.
You forgot. You see Jay, bitch, Ashley, who has won the variety at our national twice, was my winner's bitch from CCA in California. And you better believe I take a great pride in what I put up and what they've done. But that bitch was so gorgeous in the classes, and she had a handler. And I don't care who you are, where you came from, or what you're doing. If you have what I want, you're going. And Donna had her, Donna Williams, and I thought, this is a beautiful bitch, but she knows when she has to bring me. I gave her the class. Then I gave her winner's bitch. Then the brood bitch came in, and she told the owner, who also is, that has the mother of that Ashley, she's beautiful also. That whole group came in for best brood bitch. I never seen the owner of Ashley. It was Donna Williams. She wasn't standing in there. There were 4 blue animals in there. I placed all of them at CCA. One of them was my winner's bitch. Did I know that? No, I was looking at the dogs. I fell in love with her face. She was there. Donna told the owner, don't worry about it, Barb will know you. There was no way. I knew the dog. Donna was not on that. So it isn't always the handling. It isn't always the handling. Because the correct dog, putting it on at the right time is going to carry you right with it. And don't ever give up that thought, because you never know when that star is going to fall on you. Anyhow, just a little bit, when he mentioned that bitch, I thought, oh, not only did I do for you, I did for the others. Both too, both did well. Who do you have? Oh, there she is, yeah. What a beautiful bitch. What an honor. Got some pictures now. She got some ugly pictures of some beautiful dogs, but anyhow, this is not fair. This is a bad picture of an absolutely gorgeous dog. I seen him win Cincinnati with an entry of 175, and that's when there were dog shows. These things we're doing now, that's a joke. 15 dogs, 22 dogs to get a 5-point major. 3-point, that's a joke. He took that show and he was spectacular. He is a buster, was a buster son. Came out at the time when the eye problem went on. And you people have no idea, unless you've been around long enough, when the eye problem came on. It was big stuff. And when I came in, it was CEA. And then they gave me PRA. That's another story. This dog, this doesn't do him justice. He had the most gorgeous face and head. And I feel a dog that has done more. Would you have a Breeze? Breeze or a Buster? There was I think the top winning show dog that I ever seen, and he never produced too many champions. My first champion was his champion, Wayside Bodine Night Breeze. This dog was out of Bellbrook's Choice, John Bulliana. This was all Parader. This was a gorgeous show dog. And when I stand ringside at CC of A and that coat, this was good in '68. I mean, he was fantastic. He could stand up there with anything we have today. George Horn showed him all the way himself. He was one heck of a dog. To me, the top show dog I ever seen. Who do you got next? I can't see the, oh, that's a great bitch. That's my Silky. She was best of opposite in Colorado. That was Cassandra, her mother, which went, that's a blend of Parader and Tocal. And that's not a very good picture of her. But I couldn't help Nancy. Oh, that was a good one. That show did it right. That's Erica. My first best in show bitch. I bred her. I went back to my old roots, which were, went up to Marcia Keller. Took Cassie up to Marcia to breed to Last Trace. It was the last thing left out of Bellbrook's Choice. And there's pedigrees, they're just gone. They're gone. The Buster stuff's still around, but the George Horn stuff is pretty much shot. And you know who that cute kid is there. Oh, Johnny Buddy. He was a baby. And he had that dog. Dogs had balls. I was enamored with him. He had that proud, impressive picture. And when he stood in that ring, I couldn't walk away from him. I couldn't walk away from him. He was a girl away. And he did an awful lot for Clarion. And he came out of the Indies. He really did. And happy to say it was my blend of Rocky. Johnny said to me, you got a lot of rocks in your pedigree. I said, yeah, I do. 3 times back. But it laid the foundation to cross over to the Parader. So every time someone says fluffy, I want to bop them. Brand 1 type East Coast dog's not a fluffy. They're well coated. but he was special. And I don't think I gave you any pictures of the hawk. Hawk made me realize that smooths exist. I was there when Les went on to take the breed in 1970 in Worcester. I really paid no attention to smooths because they were really bad. The stuff that was in our backyard were really bad. And I won't even get into who bred them because they're who's who. They might be on some of those pictures we have at the quarter century. But anyhow, that dog had so much, he made you stop and look. I stayed until the end. Many left because they felt for sure the sable rough champion was going to go breed. Well, he didn't. Smooth went. And that just turned the whole picture around. And they've done nothing but better since. So he, to me, had the foundation work in getting people moving for smooths. No.
Okay, Carl?
So I want to make sure I answer the question. I believe it was, what was our aha moment for
Right.
our winners
Your
at the
aha
CMO
moment, yes.
CCA? So I'm going to keep it brief. I'll talk about two dogs. One was Tamir's Grandian, which was a smooth variety dog who absolutely commanded the ring from the time I watched him. He was one of the first few in the classes. He not only had this crowd picture, he had head profile and details. So he was the dog to beat from the very beginning for smooths. The rough variety, which is Grand Champion Fantasies, Rise of the Dragon. I have one thing to describe that dog. The standard came to life when I brought him to the middle of the ring. And my only concern for him was that he was going to hold out to the end, and he did. And he showed every beautiful virtue he had at the very end. I watched the dog scan under a light that was coming through a skylight that just was like a halo over him. And I watched him do this and just scan the crowd along. And I was standing over there. And as he did that, I watched his expression. I saw his head profile move in every direction. And not one time did I think or second guess myself at that point. That was my aha moment.
Okay. We're going to do one more thing and then we're going to break. Let's talk about the people. Let's talk about your mentors or people along the way that have kind of helped you. And we'll start that with Mike.
So being from the Midwest, very heavily driven by Steve and all the Prater dogs. And then, like I said, just a lot of people. There's almost so many. I mean, Barbara remembers a lot of them. You know, my mother-in-law, Sue Barb Esch, taught us a lot. It was very helpful that Tess also came to the party with a great understanding of dogs. But, you know, Ben and Joyce, you could always see a Twin Creek dog in the ring. I mean, they all had that stamp on them. Both of the gyms, same thing. Croteau's, you know, Chelstrom when he had a lot of stuff. You know, George when he would be in the ring. I mean, all those folks. You know, I remember even going out to some of Steve's club when he was doing a lot of breeding, going out there. So a lot of those folks, but you know, really started a lot in smooths, right? So we bought our first one out of Dorothy Canner. And Dorothy, God bless her, I still love seeing her at the National. She was there, I think, last year, right? Always wonder how we ever came up with that first bitch like that. But there's a lot of other smooth people along the way, you know. Some of the double-edged dogs, you see a lot of that but it's really driven by all the Midwest people. And then, you know, I could go on and on and on about all those folks because everybody's been around all those people. Frankly, didn't get a lot to the East Coast. We didn't drive that much. You know, it's tough with Dad working, so, you know, you didn't have 3 or 4 day dog shows like everybody's got today to try to get the point. But coming back to the point about mentors, I think, you know, when I was part of Central States, we used to have 350 dogs at a puppy match. 350 at a puppy match. So going to shows like that, and all of those people, all the people you saw in Q's and Review, and going to 225 plus dog specialties. Everybody became a mentor back then, truly, because there were so many people you saw every weekend. And it would be unfair to say, you know, I learned a lot from Bobby. You know, Bobby gave me, you know, my first major with a dog, and And back in the days when there was an inch of bait on the ground, everybody throwing bait when everybody used to do that really bad. Okay, but you'll never know who your mentors are, I think. I think there's always one or two people. You know, I remember when Sue Barlow, after we bred our smooth to Mrs. Sturm's, some of her dogs, back actually when I had the first rub, back to Trademark. And you know, Sue Barlow told me something I thought was really important. After we'd asked, always gone to disturb who should we breed our girl to, you know, it was only our second one, right? And Sue said, you know, you just have to jump in there. Just go for it. And I think that's the most important thing a mentor can tell you. Because you're going to make all sorts of mistakes, you're going to have all sorts of good things and all sorts of bad things, and you have to just learn along the way. And then you get a lot of input from a lot of people along the way.
Probably at the top of the list for me is Edith Levine of Glen Knowles Collies. Taught me an awful lot. The only thing Judy Evans ever had that I wanted was a relationship to be closer to Edith because she lived nearby. I didn't have that opportunity. I lived in Pittsburgh. Edith was something else. I loved the way she looked at the dogs. I liked the way she spoke out about what she thought. She wasn't afraid of saying a thing about anything. She had an opinion and she let you know it. But she was into collies. She didn't have a license for anything else but collies. She always was foremost. And next to her was Glenn Twyford. No one probably did more for me than going under him in the ring, and when he went over an animal, I found out what was wrong with my entry by where I was placed. But when I brought the good one in, like Silver Dreams, he said to me, do you know what you did? I mean, did I really know what I did? I said I like her. He said, oh yes, you know what you accomplished. These again are these people that there's not a whole lot left here that nobody, I'm sure, but the ones that do, she was a character and had a lot to do with a lot of dogs. They had a lot to do with my opinions. Glenn was much more quiet than what Edith was, but they both came from the same cloth.
That's an understatement.
Those of us who knew her were equally.
Okay, thanks. Carl?
Just want to make a general comment about mentorship. Everybody wants to be your mentor. Be careful what you ask for, and be careful who you ask for advice. It still is puzzling me today of the people that ask the advice of those of us that have been here 20, 25 years, and then they go do what somebody who's never bred a champion has done. And so be careful of who your mentor is. Make sure these people don't have selfish motives. They don't necessarily even have to be people that have their own dogs. I want to refer to two really special mentors. The hardest thing for me when I first started in this was understanding and seeing true collie expression. Joyce Dowling and Stone Collies, and if you have some of her dogs to pull up, they had some of the most beautiful eyes and expression. And so their faces really came to life as far as the standard goes. This was somebody who did not necessarily go to a lot of dog shows. And she didn't travel that far out of her area. So unless you went to her backyard and you went visiting there, you seldom got to see this kind of eye expression on dogs. And she had it not only on the sables, but the tries, which are the hardest to get. So I really learned expression by visiting Virginia Beach quite frequently, and I was there all the time. I bred her dogs, and I watched her as she raised puppies, and we had a lot of conversations about that. But my more recent mentor is somebody that's in this room, Nancy McDonald. She unselfishly gave a lot of her time and effort into sharing a lot of knowledge with me. Not only did she help me understand that the expression was a part of a very important part of the standard, but she also reminded me that it was part of the package. And so I really began to watch her, and we had lots of conversations at my kitchen table and at her kitchen table, which all Collie people love to eat before they wound up. And, you know, we really, I think, not to just get hung up on one thing, but to come up with a complete dog, that general character. You got to have something that entices somebody to go over and want to examine them to another degree. And finally, I would say about her, she not only shared that with me, but she helped me to know how to groom and how to raise them, and the importance of going to ear church. And if you guys have never been to ear church, if you know Nancy, that she has Pearl Sanctuary in her backyard. So she taught me some of the finer things that went along with not just breeding a good one, not just raising a good one, but also how to present it. And I can't thank these two people enough.
I met my first mentor through Edith Levine, and only now, and those who knew Edith could realize how brash I was at that point, because I didn't think I was. But I had bought a bitch from Mrs. Browning and was looking for a stud dog, and went to see Edith, and she brought out her tri dog and showed it to me, and she said, "Here." And I said, "Well, I don't think it's what I'm looking for." And you could feel the heat coming up. And she said, "Yeah." And she said, "What are you talking about?" "There he is." And I said, "Well, I had something a little different in mind." So she said, "Well, take your bitch and go out and see Mrs. Allen. Maybe she can satisfy you." And I left, and I met Verna. And at this stage in the game, I had been in service for 4 years. I had had litters by Champion Sterling Starmiss, by Champion Narega Invader, by Champion Faberdale Falcon. Don't ask me how I found them. Obviously, I was a good breeder, but I knew absolutely nothing. And I went out with my bitch, and Edith was right. She had exactly what I was looking for. Verna had a male who was old Alstead breeding, which at that time was just beginning to die out. It was a lovely dog. And I bred to him. And as Edith was fond in saying, I sent her out there to look at a stud dog, and she never came back, and then they were a kennel. So, and Verna did teach me a lot. She had been in a while, and we fit each other because she was interested in the breeding, she was interested in the grooming, I was interested in the showing and the traveling, so we got together. We had some very miserable trips home as she told me all the things I'd done wrong in the ring. And little comments like, well, you might have done better if you'd been watching the judge instead of looking at the other dogs, or all this kind of stuff. And then we would finally get down to, well, if you think you know so much, you do it. And you know how it progresses from there. But I did learn, and eventually we did become kennel. I eventually went into handling, and I got Mrs. William H. Long, Jr., as I have been informed many times by her. And it probably was a great career move, but you said nothing to that woman. But she would say, okay, let's go in the kennel, get that dog out, put her on the table, let's look at her and tell me what she's doing. So I got nailed to the mast, so to speak, but it was an education. And she was a woman who had bred collies for years, always had a small kennel. I think had the first white champion and had all sorts of things. But she wanted to stay small, but she wanted to stay right. And she taught me probably more than anyone. So I went on with her. As I say, she was also cheap. Probably one of the richest clients on the Gold Coast down there. But I had a budget every year for which I had to show the dogs whelper litters, raise the puppies till they were 10 days old, deliver them. Every Monday I had to go over there and we discussed possible breedings and such. Looking back, I think part of it was she was really being a mentor and educating me. But in those days when you were a handler, you just didn't walk into the ring with the dog. So I did learn a lot, and I was on a budget. She wanted a best in show on him. I was winning in the East with Janie and Bob and all the top competition. We were winning a few groups. And I got a phone call which said, "You are within $25 of your limit, please bring him home." And I said, "But that means we have to start all over again." "I don't care. You are within $25 of your limit, no more shows." And we had to bring him home another time. So every time the following year that he would place in a group and not winning, she would say to me, "Well, why didn't he win? What did the first dog have that he didn't have?" So we would go through this. And I went through this the whole year. Finally, I took him to the show, and I went best in show. And I call her up, and she says, "Yes." And I said, "Mrs. Longley went best in show today." And she said, "Oh, that's nice." And she said, "But was the dogs that he beat better than him?" I said, "I don't give a damn." We never discussed that statement. So she was.
You've got to understand how gutsy that was. And with that,
No, I'm going to say something.
Go ahead.
I'm going to interrupt one at a time. So, I think it was said something here that's really important because I've seen the same thing. Everybody you've heard, and there's a lot of you out there as well, I mean, if you've had a mentor, it's a very deep and personal relationship over the years, right? And it's something that you feel really good about. And that is distinctively different from somebody you see every once in a while at a dog show you happen to be a good friend with. That is a different relationship. I would argue that's not really a mentoring relationship. That's just a good buddy. Okay? You know, in the old days, you would go under judges because you believed that they knew how to breed a dog, a great dog. And you went under them for their professional opinion because you'd seen what they had produced and you knew they had an eye. And I think over the years, we've lost a lot of that. And I think we've lost some of those deep relationships with those really strong breeders who you know have the eye just by demonstration of what they've done over the years, their longevity, the fact that they're a consistent winner at the national. I always tell people, just because you win at your local specialty means buckets to me. I mean, you've always got to be strongly competitive in that ring year over year over year. You may not ever win it every year, but you got to be out there, right? And I think sometimes everybody gets roped into this, well, I have a mentor and they've had 2 champions. And that is not a mentor, folks. And it's a long ways away from being a mentor. And I think when we all started, you're always worried that nobody will ever talk to me when I'm young, right? Or I'm new and I'm busy, and these people are always busy with dogs and they've got this circle around them. Everybody's been through where you've been before, and you've got to be that willing to step out of your shell and say, "Hey, can you just talk to me and let me learn a little bit along the way?" So be careful who is a mentor. To me, that's a very strong and a powerful word that sometimes we just throw around a lot.
right, going along with what Mike says, I have choose a mentor well. Don't just go out there and pick somebody because they're going to pacify you or agree with everything you're saying. With mentoring, years ago, 225 dogs in specialty. It's not like that anymore. So when you look for your mentors, go out and talk to them and make sure that you're choosing for the betterment of the breed, not just to pat you on the back. Hey, you've got. Yes.
We have, because I did the car, we have a video just for entertainment of them all judging and their winners and stuff, and there's some wonderful stuff from Kathy Peters from the 92 National in Tampa, West Virginia.
Okay. So you want to make sure. Now, do we want to watch that during the break? ready? You want to put it on? Okay, so Nancy always has something entertaining for us, and Kathy Peters, I forgot to mention Kathy Peters. Oh my gosh, Kathy Peters is such a resource. She is our archivist, and you need to get in touch with her if you have some. She has information and beautiful things for you to share with your clubs, and it's the history that they're talking about, and it's visual, and you